All right. Welcome everybody to session 2. We are going to get into it. So today we are going to be talking, hold on a second, we'll get this on presentation mode for us. 2, maybe not. Boom, there it is. All right. So today I have titled this, it's a working title. Let me know if you like it or not, but how to get what you want faster. That's really what this is ultimately about. And down at the bottom, you'll see the problem with too many options and building objectives to save you from it. So there's a lot there. I understand this is kind of a presentation. We're going to be talking about two different things, one of which is a problem and the other which is the solution to that problem. So, and it's been interesting because the rise of this issue of too many options is something that is really compounded with technology over the past a little bit more than a decade at this point. And we're just now starting to see the impact of what having too many options does to a person in society, not just from, and it's literally pervasive in anything. So we're going to get into that. And then the big takeaway from today is going to be about objectives as I define them. So I have created something called the Lifestyle Strategy Playbook. It's a 7-step map, or it's a 7-step program, basically, to where you can go in and lay out things that are important to you, build a financial map towards it, and then build an accountability structure that will make you more likely to hit your goals and the things that are important to you. So I've been working on this to give you a little background on how that came about. I have been doing consulting with Fortune 500 companies for the past 13 years at the C level. And basically, through multiple different jobs I have had, I've worked with some of the most brilliant minds in the industry and got to be a fly on the wall and understand how these multi-billion-dollar corporations that have all these complexities and factors that are going on, how do they ultimately get where they want to go? How do they ultimately accomplish it through building out strategy? And what I did is I started saying, a lot of these would actually probably be smart if I did them personally in my own life. And I started doing that about 7 years ago. And what happened was that people that were close to me were like, man, that seems to be really working out for you. And I talk about what I've been doing. And then I started helping people that were close to me kind of, work things out that way too. And then they started really enjoying it and seeing results, and they started telling friends of, them. And then all of a sudden I was talking to people I didn't even know. And I was like, okay, I don't have time for this. To do a full lifestyle strategy playbook could take up to 4 hours. That's why I tell people to break it up. So, and I didn't want to there wasn't enough money to be like, I'm just going to do this one person at a time. So what I did is I systemized it, and then I built out a template where anybody can go through and kind of walk through. So this is a condensed version of it, but this is essentially, it's step 2 technically. Step 1 is creating a vision statement, but it goes very much along with objectives. So I wanted to get into that today, but before we did it, I didn't want to jump straight into the solution without talking about the problem. So let's get into that now. So love this quote, Alfred Wainwright. He was very much the huntsman, and said, an objective is an ambition, and life without ambition is aimless wandering. It's interesting when you talk to people nowadays, what ends up happening is that you get a lot of people that are doing things in their life, and they're doing things, and they may even feel like they're going places, but there's always this, tinge when you really start getting into them with this of, should I be doing better? Is this really the direction that I want to be going in? A lot of times it's easy for us to, depending on your stage in life, fall into the classic American dream of, the house, the kids, the 2.1 kids, the picket fence up front, the student loans to go along with it, and everything else. And the reality is, life for the average person nowadays, depending on where you are, is very different. And maybe you are a high schooler and you're just now looking to go to college or considering a trade school. You don't have a clue what you want to do. Or maybe you're a lot further in life. You're an empty nester recently, and now your kids are out and you're kind of they're off on their own. You're going, well, what do we do from here? Or maybe you're somewhere in between all of that. The reality is that if you don't know where you're going, you're kind of just wandering aimlessly, and you're hoping to get somewhere. So the point of today is that we need to define what somewhere is. We can't just be I think I'm supposed to be going in this direction, but who knows if that's actually where you want to be. And we aren't trained to think that. And in a day and age to where distractions, especially, when you look at your mobile devices and things like that, I mean, you want to talk about getting your attention. This thing is built. There are billions and billions of dollars that go into the grabbing of your attention on this tiny little screen. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing necessarily, but I am saying that left unchecked, it is a bad thing. And it takes us away from the things that are important. So what is an objective? So this is my definition of an objective. Nothing wrong with what Merriam and Webster put in the dictionary, nothing like that. But for the purposes of my course and how I'm utilizing that word, because I don't want to use the word goal, since goals will be considered for something else. But an objective in the Lifestyle Strategy Playbook is a 3 to 5 year outlook. We want this to be a long-term goal, essentially. So got to be thinking 3 to 5 years. It's got to be a little bit scary and audacious. Got to make you get little butterflies, a little pit in your stomach when you start thinking about it. Okay, I mean, it's not unrealistic, but man, it's a lot. That's what you want. You don't want a goal that's going to not push you. You don't want that objective to be something that you don't really have to strain for. All right. It needs to have personal significance and deep meaning. This is very important. And I use the example of a house sometimes and buying a house. Buying a house is not a great objective, to be honest with you, in my personal opinion. The reason for that is because it lacks personal significance and deep meaning. So now you can buy a house and have that set as your objective, but that's not necessarily always what's taking place. So I'll give you an example. Me and my wife, we just built a home. We moved in a couple months ago, but the home we were living in was just fine. So my goal when I set out and we set this objective for ourselves was never to build another home. That we were fine where we were. So why did we do it? Well, the reason we did it was because one of my life objectives is to be able to work from home. And with some of the things that I'm doing like right now, I needed a better space for it. And I needed a studio to be able to do some filming and some other things. And I was having to look for office space. There's nothing within 20 minutes of where we live. I was going to have to put an extra $500-600 for a crappy room somewhere, all this other stuff. And then it was going to be hard for me to get the kids from that. It's just kind of a problem. So we came up with this idea and we found this thing that was in line with our objective for me to be able to be the one that takes the pressure off my wife, be able to pick up the kids, do all this other stuff to give us more freedom in our personal life, to enable me to still work from home. We said, why don't we put the $500-600 a month that we were going to put towards an office and just put that in a new house? And then we can build a house with a room that's dedicated for it, which is what we did. So we didn't want to buy a home. We wanted to follow through an objective, which was to enable me to work from home. That was the actual objective. So for in the exact same mode, maybe you need a new home with a big room, just like I did, but maybe you have an in-law that needs to move in with you for some reason. Maybe there's something going on in their life. Maybe you need that extra room because you're about to have another kid and your family's growing. So buying a home is not the objective, right? The objective is to create a home, to take care of a family, to take care of your family, be the primary caretaker to them, to enable yourself to work from home. A lot of people are doing that nowadays with the pandemic and working these jobs. Everybody's looking to get bigger houses because they don't want to go back to the office anymore, but they're tired of working from their kitchen table. So when we're going to get more into the objective building, but it's important that it has personal significance and deep meaning, because that is what is going to drive you into the future. The other thing is this: your needs to be worth committing all extra resources to achieving. So that is why the personal significance and deep meaning is so important, because if it's not that big of a deal, then you're not going to want to commit all these extra resources to achieving it. Moves you to a fulfilling life. Again, that should go with the significance. And we'll get more into this, but there can't be more than 3 objectives total in your life. We'll get into that why in just a little bit. Okay. So you can have almost anything you want, but you can't have everything you want. This is something I like to tell people, because it's like, I really want people to think about it, because so many times we've been conditioned that, well, I've just been going down this road for so long. I've been getting ready to go to law school. I've been doing this. I've been, working at this job for 15 years. And I thought this was a career I wanted. Just 5 years away from retirement, blah, blah, blah. you can have almost anything you want. So you need to take stock into, is what you're doing right now getting you there? Now, look, I'm not saying that you should be like, okay, 3 to 5 years, I want to be a billionaire. And I'm going to do a lot of good things with that. Obviously, we want this rooted in some type of reality. If you can, great. Please come talk to me and let me know how you're going to do it. I'm interested. but there's this thing that happens when we get older to where we start to lose, I know a lot of accountants. I don't know a lot of kids that at the age of 6, when you said, what do you want to be when you grow up? We're like, I want to be an accountant. So there's nothing wrong with that. Accountants, I mean, a lot of them love what they do. You have to, especially if you're in auditing. But, but the point is, don't be afraid to dream a little bit outside the realm of the direction of your life that it's already going. Like, that could be fine. Maybe you already are heading in that direction. Maybe you need to dream a little bit harder in that direction. That could be it. Maybe there's something completely different. Who knows? But the reality is, think about it. You can have almost anything you want, but you can't have everything you want. And we'll get into the why there's only 3 objectives for that in a little bit. All right, so now let's get into the problem. So here's some questions. All right, some orange juice fans. Anybody? Come on, we're from Florida. All right, there we go. Majority of the room. There we go. Okay, how do you like your orange juice? Do you like it organic or regular? Do you like it with or without calcium boosts? Do you like it with no pulp, some pulp, or maximum pulp, which I personally hate? I consider that just eating an orange. Why would you want, I don't want my apple juice with apple pulp. I've never understood that, but hey, to each his own. Do you want it made with oranges from Spain or Florida or Argentina? I mean, like, you can literally look at the bottle and see, and I mean, if the answer is anything other than Florida, you're wrong, but it's cool. I mean, if you want Spain oranges too. Do you have a preferred brand? I mean, listen, at the end of the day, I've been drinking orange juice all of my life. Okay. I've had a lot of different kinds of orange juice. Even I will admit, they taste pretty close to the same. Okay. Minor differences, but that is a lot of options for orange juice. You're at the store, you're there to get a whole bunch of stuff. Guess what? That's a lot of things to think through just to buy one minuscule item that if you were going to turn around and, make mimosas or something, guess what? Nobody cares about all this stuff that's coming in it, right? Just get the orange juice. So this is the world that we live in, specifically in America and the UK. A lot of other countries are not privileged enough to have this many options of things, but let's be real. This is ridiculous. Okay. Now you may look at that and you go, Stephen, it's just orange juice. It's not that big of a deal. Okay. I just see my Simply Florida one, no pulp, boom, go home. It's not, it is what it is. And that's true. Maybe this is extremely simple, but then you start thinking about dinner. Think about dinner every night. How complicated has dinner got nowadays? Well, let's see. Do I want to eat something that I just got from the grocery store, or do I want to order out? Do I want to go out? If I just want to order out, well, I can literally order from anywhere in the city. So then what, I mean, do I want Mexican? Do I want Chinese? Do I just want a sub from Jersey Mike's? Do I want, I mean, it's a lot. It just takes brain power. And in a day and age to where people are chronically tired, they're chronically stressed, we need that. And guess what? This is a contributing factor to a lot of that. So I want to read to you this little bit of a very smart person, PhD at Swarthmore College, psychologist, paradox of choice. Presumption is the self-determination is a good thing, and choice is essential to self-determination. But there's a point where all of this choice starts to be not only unproductive, but counterproductive, a source of pain, regret, and worry about missed opportunities and unrealistically high expectations. So they are now starting to do studies on having too many options because they are seeing how this is contributing to the downfall of mental health. They are seeing chronic stress in people, and they're finding that if you look at happiness indexes and where they're reported, it doesn't matter what country you look at, the people who live in the most rural areas are consistently reporting happier happiness, higher on the happiness scale than people who live in downtown large urban cities. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. I'm not saying that this is the only reason, but it's a contributing factor for sure. Or that's what the experts are starting to say. So when you have to start in every little thing that you have to do every day is a huge decision, it starts to wear on you. We've only got so much brain power. It starts to eat at you some. There's been a trend within founders in a lot of these, larger companies, most notably Steve Jobs was one of them. Steve Jobs was notorious for wearing the black shirt, the jeans, all this other stuff. He never really changed too much outside of that. And when people started asking him why, he said, I have to make enough decisions for, my corporations I'm running, for all these other things, the stuff in my personal life. I don't want to have to think about, well, what am I going to wear today? It's just one more decision I have to make. He was looking to cut out areas of his life that really didn't add anything for him. Nobody cared what Steve Jobs was dressing up for. Maybe for some of us, we've got to, wear certain things at work. But if you're a person who's in uniform, like a cop or anything like that, guess what? You don't have to worry about that because you get to just wake up and go, yeah, I have a uniform. Boom, boom. I'm putting this on. I don't have to think about it. Right. But for the rest of us, it's like, okay, do I do the black stuff today? Do I do this? It's just one more thing to think about. And even if it's just an extra 2 or 3 minutes in the closet, I know some girls are looking at me going 2 to 3 minutes to pick out your outfit. You're clearly a dude. But the point is, having too many of these options in every single aspect of our life, it's just eating up just a little bit more and a little bit more, a little bit more. And now the studies are starting to show it's not just not productive, it's literally becoming counterproductive. So let's talk about some other examples here. How does this play out? So let's talk about from a financial perspective. This is one area it does. So the research is finding that finance professors analyzed retirement fund choices that people make. They checked on 401ks that were ranging from packages that employers offer from 2 to 59 choices. And this is among 800,000 employees at 647 companies. So we have a very large sample size. This is, legitimate study. And what they found was this: with 401ks, people are given enormous incentives to participate through tax shelters, employment matches. So essentially, if you choose to participate, you're throwing away free money. That's how it works. If you have a job, they offer to match you 401k at your 401k at 4%. If you're not at least putting in 4% of your 401k, you're throwing away money because that's not money your job will give you in any other way. So it's always important, if they're doing that, to match it if you can. So what was the result of having too many options? When given 2 choices, 75% participated. But when 59 choices were given, only 60% did. So just because they had too many choices, you had 15% of people drop off and say, no, I'm not going to do it. I mean, that's ridiculous. And that's 15% of people that are losing out on some very valuable, eventually tax-free compounding money in the future. So this has huge financial implications to the population. And the companies are probably trying to do a good thing. Hey, here's a whole bunch of options for you guys. Go and pick. It was intimidating. It's too much to do. How many of us have been on, Netflix or pick your streaming service? How many times have you sat there scrolling? Oh, that looks pretty good. Okay, scrolling. Actually, I did want to see that. Okay, well, scrolling. And next thing you know, 20 minutes has gone by and you still haven't picked anything that you're going to watch, right? Anybody relate? I'm not alone in that. Okay, making sure I'm not a psycho here. So, but that's the thing. There's so many choices. I remember when we were getting married, I had an idea of like the style that my wife wanted with the wedding and different things like that. But one of the things that she said was that she was just overwhelmed with the amount of options. And I mean, in the wedding industry, my gosh, you can have anything you want. You want doves, you want, a winter wonderland in Florida. I mean, you can get it all. It's amazing. So, but the reality is it's stressful. It's overwhelming. And I've always liked to say this is very much a generality, but I like to say there's 2 different types. There's 2 big differences between men and women when we go shopping. Men will go to a store and we'll walk in and go, okay, that's nice. That's nice. Oh, you know what? That's good. That's really good. That's good enough. And then they'll stop. Women will go shopping and they'll say, okay, yeah, no, that's nice. Oh, I like that. That's good. That's good enough. But there could be something better. So I'm just going to keep on looking, right? And a lot of times women are right. My house is very well decorated because my wife continues to look for that something better. But it took her a lot more time than the stuff I ended up buying for her. I was like, yeah, it's good enough. Let's go. Let's get it going. So, but at the end of the day, this is something that is a problem for everybody. Like I said, you're seeing it right now. Just literally additional choices cause 15% of people to not invest into their future. So let's break this down into, as they're calling it, choice overload. Okay, it's the enemy. So we're going to talk about dating real quick. This is very, like I said, this is very much coming into the sociological circles. All right. The quality of dating has declined a lot, partially due to the quantity and the accessibility of too many options. They're calling it relation shopping, is now a coined term that because we're using it to commoditize people down to a blurb and a personality profile. Now, for anybody looking who's out there dating, I met my wife on eHarmony. Okay. I am not hating on online dating. The problem is not online dating. The problem is the amount of options that we have on online dating. When you can swipe it to infinity, you know, whereas before you went back and, hey, you know, 100 years ago, you lived in a town of 200 people. I mean, it was between the guy who had most of his teeth and the dude who didn't, you know, your options were a lot easier to make. I'm not saying it was better, but it was easier. And that's a lot of what this is. So people are more willing to change their mind on someone they like with a sea of options available. I have a brother that's out there in the dating world right now. I have friends that are out there that are still dating well into their 30s, never been married. And the thing that I've noticed that a lot of them are starting to kind of encounter is that there are so many conversations with so many people that they're having. And a lot of them they're not dating casually. Many of them are like, yeah, like I'm 30, I'm 31. Like I want to find that forever person. I'm not just here, you know, being doing this casually. But when you're talking to 15 different people on 3 different apps, and there's new potential showing up and loading every single day, so you want to continue to swipe through and maybe that next best thing, and I'll find exactly that orange juice that has no pulp with the calcium, that has the Florida oranges, and it's exactly what I want. Maybe it's out there, maybe it's not. But this is the issue. People are less satisfied with the people they're finding in that they initially choose due to the idealization of the perfect person and thinking, oh, this guy's pretty great. This chick's pretty cool, but there might be somebody better. And they just keep on swiping. They keep on looking. Choice overload is not our friend. It is the enemy. More profiles are viewed and less time is spent on ones that we are interested in. So even the ones that people have saved or whatever, and they're looking, they're like, yeah, I really like this person. Less time is being spent on those profiles because people continue to move on. And now let's go to the extreme. In contrast, divorce rates for arranged marriages where there is no choice is 4%. It's interesting. I mean, I'm not saying that we should all just start, you know, relying on our parents again to match us up with somebody. My dad tried that a couple of years ago with some random chick he met on a plane, and that was interesting for me. Matching her up with me, not for him. So maybe. So when you consider the divorce rate is 50% nowadays, and that's not 1 in 2 people that get divorced, it's 1 in 2 marriages, and people who get divorced are more likely to get divorced because guess what? Once you get divorced, divorce has become an option again. And that is where it gets difficult. So, like I said, when it's not a choice, and again, the amount of choice is not the contributing factor to this 4%. A lot of that's cultural. A lot of it's a lot of things, but it's still telling when you look at it at the extreme opposite of where we are nowadays. So let's talk about the power of limitations. And that sounds very contradictory to itself, okay? When you limit your choices in any category, it's pretty much scientifically proven at this point that it creates focus, it reduces overall stress, it enables faster decision-making, usually produces better results, stronger commitment to what you choose, less likely to regret the decision, and reduces counterfactual thinking, which is basically just wondering what if too often. So this is what happens when we start to do or put limitations on ourselves. There's a lot of popularity in the rise of stoicism nowadays, especially among people who are wealthy, because what they're finding within stoicism is they're like, okay, well, with stoicism, if I go and I can have a whole bunch of things that I want, but I'm going to deny myself these things, then I will actually be happier. And they're fine. And it's, very much a true thing in a lot of people that practice that. So even outside of Christian circles and in different philosophical areas, we are finding that, oh, you know what? That's right. It turns out getting everything I want isn't necessarily the answer. All right. So this is why, getting into it, you are only allowed 3 objectives. So I think we've talked enough about the problem of too many options. And that is why we're going to talk about 3 objectives. And again, you can just have 1, you can have 2, you can have 3. Can't have more than 3. All right. And it needs to be rooted in personal significance. And if it is a powerful answer to a lot of this problem of too many options. So let's talk about it. So this is a clearly defined objective. It has to have 4 different elements. It has to have an action, a metric, a detail, and a deadline. So pay off $20,000 on my student loans by October 31st. Lose 20 pounds of fat by my birthday. These are all clearly defined objectives because they have all 4 pieces of the action, the metric, the detail, and the deadline. So interesting thing about this, out of those 4, the action, the metric, the detail, and the deadline, the most commonly left out element of any objective, any goal, I would also argue that's also the definition of a goal. You have to have those 4 elements. The deadline is the most consistently left out element of all of that. You want to know why? People are afraid of failing. I can say, hey, I want to lose 20 pounds. But if I don't put a date on it, well, then I just said someday. Well, that's not a goal. That's a wish. All right. I have until the end of my life to lose 20 pounds. Great. Not a huge chance of failure on that one, right? I want to save up $50,000. The reality is there is no reason not to put a deadline on anything if you truly want it, because a deadline creates urgency, but a deadline, it creates commitment. So if you don't have a deadline on these things, then you have 2 problems basically. Number 1, you don't have any sense of urgency. You can't act on urgency, and urgency is required in order to get this to happen. So that's the first one, is urgency. The second one is that you can't tie a plan to this. If a business were to come out and say, yeah, we want to be a $100 million business by someday, nobody would invest in that company. Nobody. Why? Because it's like, well, what are you going to do? How are you going to get there? When's it going to happen by? You can't just have this eternal run rate as a business. It doesn't work that way. So that's why in businesses, no, everything's got a date to it. Maybe it's a calendar year. Maybe it's a 3-5-year outlook, something like that. We have to operate in our lives the exact same way. A lot of people say, man, Stephen, I feel like you're always like rushing around trying to get something done. I'm like, I got deadlines. I have dates on things. But guess what? If I go and I set, so this is just me personally, I have my 3-year goals, and then I have my annual goals that are tied to those 3 years. And then I have my monthly goals, and then I have my daily goals that are mapped to the monthly goals. So every day before I go to bed, I have a whiteboard at home. I write down 3 to 5 things that if I don't accomplish these 3 to 5 things, and they're little things, little steps, but they're all tied eventually to those big goals. So if I go in and I do those 3 to 5 things, I look at my board and I go, okay, if I don't do these 3 to 5 things tomorrow's a failure. In my eyes, I'm viewing it and I say, tomorrow's a failure if I don't get these 3 to 5 things done. If I get it done, then tomorrow's a success. Okay, great. Wake up the next day, boom, maybe it was a success. Okay, great. I've moved that much closer to my goal. Maybe it was a failure. Maybe I only got 3 out of the 5 things done that day. Well, even though I'm qualifying it as a failure, because I'm living with that urgency and I'm living with that clarity and that focus, still technically moved in that direction, right? Sure, I didn't get exactly where I wanted to go that day, but compare that to the quote that we talked about at the beginning, the aimless wandering. If I didn't have a deadline, if I didn't have my objectives defined, then how exactly would I know whether or not I was even being successful at what I wanted or not? I wouldn't. So you have to have these elements in order to be able to move into the direction that you really want. What you'll find is that once you define what you're important, and one thing I should give a caveat on, if you are single or dating, then you go through this entire thing by yourself. Okay. It doesn't matter if you've been in a long-term relationship. for 4 years with somebody, anything like that. If you're single or dating, you're not legally tied to each other. Okay. You go through and you do that by yourself. If you are married, you have to do this with your spouse. You cannot do this in a vacuum. You have to do this with your spouse because it all comes down to tiers. And we're going to get into that in just a second. So let's talk about actually creating your objectives. So I'm going to leave this slide up for a little bit because I want everybody to absorb it. I will post these later, get it to everybody. We'll have this on the YouTube channel to go back and review if you want to pause it, screenshot, whatever. So this is how to actually create an objective. First 4 elements that we talked about. You got to have an action metric, a detail, and a deadline. The next is I put keep your vision statement in mind. I was thinking about that. That's actually step one. When I say vision statement, this is something that company's done. It's basically just a phrase, doesn't have to be super long. Me and my family's, it's something along the lines of, I got it written down. And of course I can't remember it exactly right now, but it's a guiding principle. It's a North Star. And it's that, our family wants to achieve, and it can change, people change vision statements all the time, but I tell people don't change it more than like every other year because, your vision shouldn't change too much. So ours is something along the lines of like, we want to enjoy financial independence so we can serve others and live freely. It's roughly what ours is. So it's not specific. It's a little airy, a little ethereal, and that's fine. But it's my North kind of guiding star. So when I'm building my objectives, I go, well, does that line up to what I want to do? If it doesn't, then maybe I need to question my objectives a little bit. So that's just what the vision statement is. No more than 3. So let's talk about that. There's tons of psychological studies done around the importance of 3. So anytime you're looking at something in options, you're normally given, options in 3. Think about any place you go to that has fast food. What do you have? Small, medium, and large. There is a reason that 3 is kind of the magic number. For years in sales and corporate, they always taught us always present 3, right? Because nobody wants to go with the cheapest one. And if they do, then, okay, they're not going to buy much. And few people ever go with the option one. So as long as you're doing a bigger option, people normally settle on the medium. So there's a lot of psychology behind that. And there's a good reason. So, but let's continue on. I'll get into more of that later. So the next is that it has to be quantitative. This is extremely important. A lot of people will do goals like, I want to be a better person. What does that mean? Okay, we can't measure that. Oh, I want to learn to, do, basket weaving. Okay, that's nice. How good do you want to be? How quickly do you want it? Like it has to be better defined. It has to be quantitative. I want to be able to build a basket within 3 minutes. Okay, well now that's something because that speaks to proficiency. You just want to be able to build a basket. I mean, sure, I'll give you 3 weeks, a couple of YouTube videos. I'm sure you could figure it out. But if you want to be proficient at basket weaving and you give yourself a time limit of 10 minutes, okay, that's going to take some big objectives here. Has to be achievable within 3 to 5 years. So again, these objectives are meant to stretch you. Now, look, I have had multiple objectives, and companies that I've worked with have had multiple objectives, 3 to 5 years. And guess what? We don't know what's going to happen in 3 to 5 years. I had twins. Okay. You want to talk about a monkey wrench into plans financially, health wise. I mean, we weren't getting any sleep. That was not something I was planning on. Did it mess me up from my objectives? A little bit. Push back my timelines. I had to change my deadlines a little bit because I had financially mapped for 2 kids, not 3. A lot of other things changed with that. But at the end of the day, my objectives actually didn't change that much. They could have, but mine actually stayed the same. I just had to push them back a little bit. And then that changed the short-term goals. And then that changed the plan. So the objectives were always the same thing. But at the end of the day, it just took me a little longer to get there. Now, for some people, having 3 kids may be a complete different, okay, you know what? Initially, we wanted to meet my wife. We wanted to travel the world. That was our thing. We wanted to go to a new country every 3 months. That's where all our money was going to. Boom, boom, boom. Now we got twins. Now we need a house. We're going the exact opposite. We need stability in this. So things change. That's fine. As long as it has meaning, if it has meaning to you, if it has significance, and it meets all these other qualifications, then that's fine. You'll always be moving in a direction that you choose versus aimlessly wandering. That's what you don't want. What you don't want is to go from, well, we went from wanting to travel the world to now we're just scrambling. And now we got a house, and now we got these twins, and they're always crying, and I can't ever, get a full night's sleep. And oh my God, why are diapers so freaking expensive? Like, and times two. It's all that stuff. That's not what you want, because then you're not in any kind of control. You can only control you in this world. That's it. So without these things, you don't have that. You're just going to be stuck flailing. It's not a way to get anywhere. Popular categories when you are building your objective, these aren't all of them, but these are the ones where normally they'll end up falling. Family, money, travel, hobbies, skill development, work, giving, education. Normally, these are going to make up the majority of what people are going to find. And I don't have a slide on this, but I talk about this a lot in a book that I'm writing. And it's a term that I came up with called TIERS. And the TIERS stands for the 3 everlasting alternating resources. And those are time, energy, and money. And the reason I came up with the fancy acronym is because I used to just say time, energy, and money all the time. People go, oh, yeah. No, I get that. But really, when I would talk about it, what I was really talking about was the relationship between time, energy, and money. And that's why it's the 3 alternating, put that in there, because the reality is we are constantly trading out time, energy, and money for one of the other. The most common relationship that we're all used to is having a job. We trade our time and our energy. And what do we get for that? We get money. Well, a lot of things that I try to encourage people is, well, how can you use money to get more time and energy? I'll give you a very functional way that I do this. We have a maid service that comes to our house twice a month, and they do deep clean stuff. And they send these 3 ladies, they get in here, boom, they knock all these chores out that would normally take me and my wife probably a grand total of 8 to 10 hours to do on ourselves, right? And I pay them, $120, $150, whatever it is each time to come and do that. Well, is that $120 that I pay them worth, so $240 a month, is that worth me getting 8 to 10 hours of my life back? Oh, absolutely. Now maybe for somebody else that's not worth it, but for me, where I'm at right now, yeah, there's a lot of other things I could do that way. Maybe I could use that free time to work a little extra, make that money back, and then some. Like if you had it, like I have a friend who's a nurse. Let's just do that because I know what she makes. She's doing, I think it's something like $55 an hour. So let's just make it 50. Okay. So if she were in this situation and she said, okay, I'm going to pay a maid to come in and save me $800 and it's going to cost me $250 a month. And they're going to save me 8 hours of time. Well, I can go and work overtime and make $50 an hour. So I'll only work 4 hours. I'll pay off. Am I doing that math right? Did I say that right? 250. I'll work 5 hours. Sorry, 250. And then I'll still net 3 hours of my life back every single month to go do whatever I want to do. And it actually didn't cost me anything because they freed me up. So those are just some simple examples. But as you start thinking about it specifically with your life, we do this in business all the time. We call it outsourcing. Hey, I don't have the time. I don't have the capacity. I don't have the skills to do this. I'm going to outsource this to somebody else. And that will cost me money, but it will save me time, right? And maybe there is no break even. Maybe you don't make up that money elsewhere and you just spend $250 and say, okay, I'm just going to find that money from some other place that we have in our budget. We're going to enjoy those 8 hours. I'm going to drive to the beach for the day, whatever you want to do. So when you start thinking about the relationship between those 3s, it will help you in achieving your objectives. So coming here, starting to wrap up, this is a question I always get. And Christians always call this one out, and it's a great question. So I want to put this in here. All right. Why not add spiritual or mental health objectives? Okay. I get this question a lot, and it's a great question. The reason you do not do spiritual or mental health objectives is because you can't track that. That's all this is. This isn't an all-encompassing, hey, if you do this, your entire life will put together. I think about people like Anthony Bourdain. Anthony Bourdain was a famous chef, traveled the world, cooking, different places, meeting different people, TV show fame, all the other things. Guy committed suicide a couple years ago. So very sad story of somebody, but we all know plenty of celebrities or people that, seem to have their life together, going in the right ways. They found all the things success and money can buy, and that's not enough. So I'm not dismissing in any way and saying that, hey, if you focus on these things that I've talked about in your goals, that it's ultimately what's going to make you happy. That's not the promise here. Okay. There's other things that we cannot quantify that are going to go into this. Okay. You can do all the right things in life. And the Bible talks about if your heart's not in the right place, guess what? It's for nothing. So it's the same thing with this. But when it comes to planning, again, if you're picking things that are of deep significance and meaning towards you, things that actually matter, you're not just working for the sake of working and making money or whatever the case is. If you're doing things that are truly meaningful to you, you've thought this out, you're in lock and step with your spouse, whatever the case is. From the people I've worked with and, the people I hope to continue working with, I've seen the results. I've experienced myself of what that does for my spirituality, for my mental health. When all these other aspects in my life are aligned, it's a lot easier. Now, do I still have it times where I may question God or something, or, I'm struggling with my mental health, I'm feeling depressed? Sure, absolutely. COVID's been an absolute beast. I've had a really hard time with that. I'm an extrovert. You think being locked in my house for 2 years has been fun? No, it hasn't been 2 years, but you get what I'm saying. So but was it easier for me to pick myself up on my bootstraps or to go to therapy and, talk and work out my issues, knowing that when I got there and they're like, well, what do you want to do? What's important to you? Well, actually, I know exactly what is important to me. I have it defined as these objectives. I'm just struggling right now due to all these other factors. Yeah, it made it a lot easier for me to get back up and to get back on that because I never lost sight of what was important for me in my life. And maybe I did look at one of those objectives and go, well, you know what? It's changing a little bit. I did want that, but now I'm starting to realize in the depths of despair that actually that thing really wasn't that important to me. Now it's this. Now this is more important to me. So that's the only reason that I say you don't include a spiritual or a mental health objective in here, because I can't, as you go through and you're doing these things, you can't measure that. It doesn't mean it's not important. It just means you can't measure it. That's the only reason. So that question definitely comes up. So that's why I wanted to make sure that I talked about it a little bit. But maybe you'll find some of these objectives, and we're going to end on this. I'd just like to give an example of a couple different ones. So have a $4,000 surplus over our expenses every month by January 1st, 2025. That's actually one of mine right now. So, which is a lot easier when you don't quit your job all of a sudden like I did. But so now I have 3 years. I have a roadmap, 2.5 technically, to get us back to that point. I've created a deficit of the fact that I now don't have my income, and now I am working to replace that. So for the next 3 years, this is 2.5 years, this is my goal. I know I want to get to that $4,000 surplus. How I get there? Got a lot of different ideas for that. Some might work, some may not. But ultimately, I know this is what I'm working towards. When I'm doing those 3 to 5 things a day, that's ultimately what I'm working towards, because I know that will enable me the financial freedom to, if my wife wants to work less, she can. If she wants to keep working, she can. If we want to do something extra with the kids, we can. If we want to take time and travel and do some crazy vacation in Bali for 10 days, we can. That financial freedom is what that objective is. That's my definition of financial freedom for my family. So that's that one. Start for the varsity football team by game 1 of my junior year. Hey, this applies in every stage in life. You could be a high schooler. You could be, like I said, 70. It doesn't matter. You can do this at any stage. Achieve vice president of the role of the company. Have a salary of $200K by June 15th. Hike the entire Appalachian Trail. This is one that somebody told me. Completely out of shape. I'd never been into it. Went hiking a few times and loved it. Decided that's what I want to do. You don't just wake up tomorrow and hike the Appalachian Trail, okay? For those of you who aren't aware of it, it's pretty long. And so there's a lot of physical preparation that goes into that, a lot of camping, a lot of skills. This person has a little over 3 years to be able to reach that goal. So that means a lot of their hobbies, a lot of their time, a lot of their energy, a lot of their money, it's going to go tied into that. It's very important to them, right? Read the Bible 3 times by January 1st, 2026. Well, Stephen, I thought you said we can't have spiritual goals. That's not a spiritual goal. You can read the Bible and be you can be an atheist and read the Bible and be looking for, ways to disprove it, Lee Strobel, right? So, obviously the motivation's there, but, if you want to have as close to a spiritual goal as you could. You want to grow with God. You want to do these things. You want to read your Bible doing that. Well, guess what? Reading it once a year, that's something you can measure. That's something that you can decide whether or not you're tracking towards. And will reading the Bible, one time a year for the next 3 years improve your spiritual health? I hope so. It's a great place to start, but that's something that we can actually track to. So, like I said, I'm not saying you can't have spiritual goals, because again, reading your Bible is not a guarantee that it will do that, but it's a great contributing factor potentially. So that's just another example. Backpack for 3 months in Europe, buy a home with an extra bedroom. Our dad can live with us. Play a Freebird. This was a good one. This is another one with somebody I coached. Play the Freebird solo by Leonard Skinner on guitar by January 1st. This person was a mediocre guitar player. They wanted to get better. Freebird is one of the longest solos in published music history. All right. To play that solo is going to take a lot of practice, a lot of work, a lot of technical skills that person didn't have. So it wasn't just, I'm going to sit here and learn to play one song for the next 3 years. No, it was, that's the peak, right? If I can do this, I'll be able to do so many other things. So that person has to learn multiple different styles, working on their dexterity, lot of different skills that are going into just playing that one song in 3 years. So I thought that was a very interesting one. Pay off $60,000 of student loans. Very common one right now. Open my own goat yoga studio. That's another real one that somebody gave me one time. I thought, hey, that's great. So goat yoga, I've never done that one, but I've seen videos of it. It's looks distracting. I'm not going to lie. I thought yoga is supposed to be like relatively peaceful, but something about having this thing just hop on your back and yap at you. Just think it'd be funny, but whatever. Have 2 children by August 1st. I mean, that's an interesting one. Somebody was talking to me about that one. I'm like, well, can that be your goal? Sure, absolutely. And hopefully that works out for you. Can you time that? No, but can you work towards it? Can you do a lot of things during that time to make sure it happens? Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of flexibility in what the objectives are, as long as you're following the guidelines that we talked about over here. And I'll end it with this one. So if anybody's there, they want to screenshot it, be my guest. Like I said, we'll try to push that up. But that's it as far as the presentation goes. So I wanted to open it up. Any Q&A, if we had any questions right here. And please let me over here. But any thoughts? Go ahead.